Our session is titled Clueless at 30. In this discussion, it will be revolving around Shalini Prakash's new book, Clueless at 30. Shalini Prakash is an investor, entrepreneur, and author, and this is her first book. She will be in conversation with Jayanti Madhukar, who is a Bangalore-based journalist. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you for being here. This is going to be a very interesting and fun session. If any one of you is clueless, then you are at the right room, at the right place, and with the right expert. Meet Shalini Prakash. She's an extremely interesting person, and she has written the book Clueless at 30. Clueless at 30 was launched, I think, recently on December 5th. Yeah, and 30 is a good age to be, I feel. But I'm also thinking that this title, this particular Clueless at 30 title, will be true for any age. So Shalini, I think you're going to have a kind of a series now, Clueless at 30, Clueless at 40, whatever. But what caught my attention was the tagline on her book. There were two. One is a millennial search for everything, full stop, and nothing. Now, this is, in my experience as a journalist, I've been told to avoid cliches. And there are two words which are top of that list. One is techie, and one is millennial. These two words can explain everything from economy to rising housing prices to travel endemic before the pandemic and everything, attrition, you name it. But now coming to millennial, what or who is a millennial? Is it an age or is it a behavior? And I tried Googling it, and Google came up with some very illuminating points and prompts. And one of the prompts was, is millennial the most used word? Another prompt was, is millennial a dirty word? And there was even a prompt which said, is millennial capitalized? And that, I think, was my fraternity to God bless us all. But I stopped my search on millennial and I went to Shalini's profile. She sent me a lovely profile, and this is what I got. She's an investor in early stage startups. She's a writer and was LinkedIn top voice in 2017 and was featured in 40 under 40 in the Alternate Investments India list. She has been a national level badminton player, and last but not the least, she has done her master's in management from the London School of Economics. With so much in her resume, I think the first obvious question to ask you, Shalini, is, are you clueless?
I think I am. And I've slowly started to believe that that's a very good state to be in, and hence the book. I think maybe 10 years ago, if you asked me this question, the response would have been very, very different. It created a lot of anxiety. I would get really nervous, especially the transition phase, right? When you're moving from one journey to the next. And when you're trying to answer the big life questions, what is it that you're born to do? Or what are you passionate about? And, being able to, not being able to answer those questions itself and following the herd, right? I mean, that's what I did. And I think that would make me very nervous. And I would just say, okay, my friends are also doing this. I'm just going to do that. But then I think now every time there's a lull or when there is a transition phase in my career, I've stopped feeling so nervous about it. And I still worry a lot, but I've associated that with hope as opposed to anxiety. Yeah, I am clueless about a lot of things, and I think it's a good state to be in.
Well, I'm sure there's not one person in the audience who won't agree with you. But now let's go back to the book. What made you think it would be a good idea to write about it?
So in my late 20s, I did my engineering, I did my corporate, and at least prima facie, I seemed so sorted, right? I mean, I went to good schools, great job, everything. And then, I didn't want that life anymore. I wanted something more. I wanted something different for myself. And then the same questions again. Oh, you should figure out what your passion is. You should do what you're really good at. You need to explore and all of that. So I actually did take that advice. And then I worked with, Inc., which is TED.com's partner company. I would watch these videos, and then I would buy these books, Tony Robbins and this and that. I would sign up for a lot of these self-help courses, everything. I thought someplace I should find the answer, right? I mean, I have to. And I changed my job so many times thinking, okay, if I work with TED-like community, it's full of ideas, I must get at least one idea of what is it that I'm meant to do. And then that didn't happen. I spent 3.5 years. And then I said, okay, maybe I should work with startups full of entrepreneurs, full of ideas. And then, something has to come out now. And then I spent several years even there, and then nothing really came out. And then, I just got so tired. I got so tired of searching, because everything started with, oh, you have to start with what's your passion or what's your interest area. And then if you see all these self-help books, or even books like Ikigai and all of that, right? Like there's this passion, and then what you're good at, and the center of it is the core of your life. And everyone's constantly telling you this, but I'm like, but I don't know what the heck is my passion. I don't know where to even begin from, right? To even move forward. And slowly I realized that half the world is clueless, right? And there is no book and there is no book for such people, right? And it's only at the point where you have figured out a few things in life, you can move forward. And there's nothing else for people who have not even reached that point. And so I started thinking a lot about identity crisis and social identity and what it really means to people, and the kind of emotions that you go through, the anxiety, the FOMO, and you realize that FOMO is not just with you. Your parents are also feeling that, oh my God, this person got this promotion, they bought a house, and what the heck are you doing? And you just quit this job without thinking, and what next? And so I think, so a lot of these experiences around the age of 30 got me thinking about the identity and who I am, and the state that I was in, and that's what really inspired me to write. It's for all the people who are clueless and yet not figured out.
Yes, and have read your book, and there are a lot of takeaways from there, and it's not really, in fact, the title is quite misleading. There's a lot of takeaways from this book, but you got to read it. And the next question that
the title is misleading because?
Sorry?
The title is misleading because? Did you say the title is misleading?
No, the title is misleading. That's what I said, yeah. Okay. I'm actually clueless what I said. I did say title is misleading. Sorry.
I thought you said it's misleading because you can be clueless at 30 or 40.
What I wanted to say was the title is misleading, that clueless at 30, because in the book, I got a lot of takeaways, and it's not, you're really clued in, is what I meant to say. But coming back to millennials and their love for abbreviation, I saw in your book, there are a lot of abbreviation, but I did try a few on my millennial sons, and believe me, they were clueless about it. Some they knew, some they didn't. And I'm going to focus on four abbreviation, which kind of gives a flow to your book. And they are FOMO, which I do know, and SOBO, which I don't know.
Point by me.
JOLO, I don't know. And MOFO, I still don't know. And for those in the audience, yes, I can rhyme.
Yeah, I tried really hard to make sure they rhyme. So I spent a lot of time. So yeah, I think a lot of us are familiar with FOMO, which is popularly known as fear of missing out. And so just to take a step back, so the book actually has 4 parts. And I talk about what happens to a person who's clueless and what are the 4 phases that this person goes through. And that's how the book is sectioned. And the first part is saying, we're all clueless. The book is also although it's nonfiction, it's a story of me and 3 of my friends, and also, my friends in the startup ecosystem and so on. But it's about the choices that we made very early on when we went to college. I come from a South Indian household where, I knew I was born to or meant to be an engineer, right, at the age of 10. So I came from one of those households, and I did all of that. And so did a lot of my friends. And, but then yet, there was like, oh, we are not enough. And then we are seeing all these other friends who are like going out there and killing it. And they're coming in all these Forbes lists and that list. And we're like, man, we followed this blueprint for life, and how did we get it so wrong? Like, we did everything right, and why are we feeling so restless? And in whatever jobs or whatever that we had taken up. And so the FOMO is essentially about all the anxieties that we feel. And then from there on, I move into the part 2 of the book, the phase 2 of the book, where it's saying, okay, if you have to get out of the state of dilemma or anxieties, what can you undo or what can you do? And you need to set yourself out or set out looking for new opportunities or new options for yourself, right? And you need to get out of your comfort zone. You've got to go out there and do new things. So the phase 2 essentially talks about all the things that can go wrong, right? You're thinking grass is greener. I saw my friend doing the startup. I'm going to do that too, because that is like a better option or better opportunity for me. But then when you are in that phase 2, there are a lot of these other fears, there are a lot of these other challenges, fear of, of being a failure, or, fear of, looking like an idiot, or, whatever, right? All these other fears. But then there is no other go. When you're clueless, this is what you need to do. You got to put yourself out there, irrespective of what fear is there or anything that you may encounter. And then from there on, I move to JOLO, which is the joy of letting go, unshedding all these inhibitions, and letting go of all the stories that you're telling yourself, or the belief systems that you have built about how much the world really cares about your failures or your self-doubts. Actually, nobody really cares, because everyone is so drowned in their own shit. Like, nobody really cares what you're doing, right? About, if you're going to be a failure or a success. So the phase 3 really talks about letting go of all those inhibitions. And then we move finally into my favorite phase, which is the MOFO phase, which is, moving forward. You just move forward. You just keep taking those small steps, irrespective of you having figured out, your passion or whatever it is. You just keep moving forward, and you keep taking those chances, and, you're never going to be a finished product, and you're always going to be a work in progress. And, and that's the joy of this journey. So even though you're clueless, you just keep taking those chances on yourself.
When you say work in progress, I think of our city, but that's okay. But in all these are the 4 main abbreviations that you will find in the book. But there's one particular abbreviation which I really liked, and that was my personal favorite, that is MFD, because I guess we come to that stage of life where everything is about MFD. Let Shalini explain it.
Yeah. So MFD is the mostly find decision. So in our search for finding better opportunities or options for ourselves, we stress so much about, oh, is this really what I want to do? And we ask so many questions that it really sort of paralyzes us, or, they say choice paralysis, and, because there's so many choices out there, right? So you don't make that decision even. So MFD is, just make a decision that is mostly fine for you, that, you weigh the options of what are the consequences that will come out of that decision. And if you can live with that decision, then just go ahead. Don't wait for that perfect solution to arrive, or wait, and just keep moving forward. So yeah, that's something that I've spoken in phase 2, which is the sober phase, where I've urged people to get out of comfort zone and go out there, but don't be bogged down by making that perfect decision. Just take a decision that is mostly fine and keep moving.
And there was one more section which really caught my attention again, and that is about millennials and your take on millennials and monogamy. This is really interesting and very liberating.
Yeah, my husband and family is in the crowd, but I think in your 20s, or more so even now in the recent years, right? Everybody tells you the world is your oyster. Go be what you want to be. And even if you read all these self-help books and all these videos, right? I mean, they just keep saying that again and again, right? And the moment they say that you can be anything that you want to be, you get so nervous in terms of what you can do and so on. So one of the things that I strongly talk about in the book itself, saying, when you don't know what is that one career or one direction that you need to take, why can't you be 20 things, or why can't you be 30 things, right? And and in further along in the book as well, in part 4, I've also said, you have to lead something called a slash life, right? It's about how can we collect all these multiple avatars. When you don't know what is that one thing, can you be an artist slash blogger slash, yoga enthusiast slash technologist slash, correct all these slash. It does not matter if that's what you want to do, but you just sort of follow your curiosity and just explore what it has to offer. And all these slashes coming together will give you the unique perspective or this unique avatar that no one can match, and that is who you're going to be. So I think when I'm talking about monogamy, I'm saying, we as people are not wired to stick to one thing, that one career or that one life. So why just stick to one way of thinking especially when it comes to career, when you can be everything that you want to be?
Well, your husband is in the audience, so I will not question more on this. But that aside, we will talk about the slash life that you were talking about. And I think some of you must be knowing that you started a platform called Find Your Slash. And the best part of this platform is you even managed to monetize it. And
monetize people's cluelessness.
by pretending to be clueless. But that aside, tell us a little more about, you did mention about the slashes, the different avatars, and do you think now it's easier to lead this kind of a life where you can do 2-3 things and possibly give it all the same focus?
So the reason why I started Find Your Slash is, when I was in this phase in my early 30s saying, oh, what is it that I don't want to do? And then at least I was in a position where I was I was an investor. I was meeting a lot of inspiring people, amazing people, entrepreneurs, founders. And I was like, oh my God, think about somebody who's working in a traditional IT firm doing this 9-to-6 job, how stifled or boxed that they must be feeling, right? So I started this community out of my own curiosity, and I started putting it out on LinkedIn, on other platforms, saying, hey, if you're clueless, come by this weekend. And every single time I was sold out, right? I mean, this was not the intention of monetizing, but then the idea was I was able to attract people. And these people were like right from doctors to interior designers to engineers. It was people from all kinds of backgrounds coming, right? And what was very interesting there is, not everyone necessarily was looking to quit their job or do 3 jobs at one time, right? I mean, that is not what they were looking for. And that is not something I was vouching for either, right? I mean, all of us have financial responsibilities or personal responsibilities, and we are not at the liberty to do so. The reason why Find Your Slash was saying, we always put so much emphasis and we celebrate only the main avatar. We don't care about our second avatar or our weekend avatar or our night avatar, right? And that is so much more. And maybe that is probably the true extension of who we really are. And maybe it's our way of expressing or our way of channeling our energy and aspirations and everything and bringing it to some shape and form. So yeah, living the slash life through the Find Your Slash community was mostly about leading avatars that really mean something to you, and yeah, do things 3 months or 6 months and keep changing. And the beauty about leading a slash life is you never need to get it perfect, right? I mean, you can do this now and then you say, okay, this is not something I want to do, and you can keep changing. So yeah, it is about MFD and monogamy and letting go of all of that.
Before I go with my next question, how much time do we have? We have enough, right? I don't have my watch doesn't work.
7-8 minutes. 7-8 minutes.
Okay, yes, yeah. So we'll take a little. See, there was another thing about. Just a quick question about some of the advices that you had given. Not advice per se, but some of the takeaways, like I would like to say. One of it was fake it till you make it. And that was really, really, I mean, I'm going to use it. And another thing is how we see life as a milestone and not as an adventure. And Shalini, that was an eye-opener for me. So maybe you start with the second and then we'll do the fake it.
Yeah. So I think when we treat our journeys as, like a milestone, saying, oh, I want to be successful in the end. And that's all we all want, right? I mean, we have all those aspirations, right? And we cannot take failure as an answer especially when we set off doing what we want to do. So when we are so focused on getting where we want to be, that successful journey in the end, we forget that this is all of this is also an adventure, right? And it would be so nice if we don't treat failure as the opposite of success, but as a part of the journey or a part of the adventure itself, right? So yeah, so I think that's what I mean, saying, don't treat it as a destination, and also don't treat failure as the opposite of success. And maybe it's the whole adventure, the failure and the ups and downs and everything that comes in the process. And to answer your other question, which is fake it till you make it, is I think when we set out on new journeys or anything that we want to do, especially I've spoken more about it in the phase 2 of the book, when we set out there to do new things, you may feel so vulnerable, or you may feel like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. And one of the things is, I remember, 6-7 years back, my friend Varun is here, but we've traveled a lot doing these talk series, going out there on stage and talking. I've never spoken on stage in my life, right? And I'd gone with all these amazing speakers who are like killing it on stage, and I'm moderating the session, and then you would feel so bad, like what do you do? What you tell yourself during those instances, I think matters the most, right? I mean, that's what I mean when I say fake it when you make it, not like as a shortcut, but it's about, sometimes you just go out there and try to speak like a pro, even though you don't feel like one inside. You just fake that proness of being on stage, and and just keep moving forward. And yeah, I've spoken a lot about it in the Super Phase. Yeah,
and it's like you just wing it. And one question that comes to my mind is, it takes a village to raise a child, and probably it seems like it takes a village to write a book. So how supportive have your family and friends been?
First of all, to write a book, you need a bigger family. Okay. Well, they've been very, very supportive, especially when you're trying to do this along with a job and everything. But I think one person, but although it takes a village to write a book, but there's always one person who's constantly making sure you do it, because it needs a lot of discipline and dedication. And then you need one person to listen to all your crazy ideas, your dark side, and all that you're going through, and especially when you're shaping the book and giving it structure. And for me, that is my friend Varun, who's here. Varun, come up. I'll be sad. It's okay. I think a lot of you probably know Varun. Varun is more popular than I am. So he wrote this book, How I Braved Anu Auntie, and founded $1 million company. And then one day I met Varun, and I told him, hey, I have some time on hand. And I said, I want to write a book. And then he said, what will you write about? And then he and I looked at each other, and I said, there are a lot of demons in my head. Maybe I should start penning it down. And, from there on, I think one thing led to another. And he also helped me come up with the name of the book. I have got so many compliments on the name of the book, and I'd like to thank Varun for that.
Yeah, and I'm actually really, really proud of Shalini, because over the years, a lot of people have walked up to me and said, hey, I want to write a book. How do you write a book? Tell me the whole process and all of that. And even after giving them all the insights, none of them actually end up getting a book published. But I think what really worked for Shalini is she wanted to understand the process of writing a book rather than just tell me, okay, how do you write a book? And the secret of writing a book, obviously, is to breaking it down into chunks, right? And she understood that. And first she said, okay, how do you write a book? How do you get published? What happens after publishing? I was like, slow down. Write the first chapter first, and then see if you really want to go ahead with that. And she came back to me with like 4 chapters. The next time I met her, she came back to me with 16.
Varun stopped reading.
And yeah, after that, I'm like, okay, you're all set. And the next thing I know is that she's got a book published. So can we actually give a big round of applause to Shalini? Because I can tell you, dreaming about writing a book is one thing, but actually going in and writing it and getting it published is another thing. So proud of you, Shalini.
Thank you. So, but Varun, I want to ask you one question, right? For me, you're the poster child of millennial. I feel like a lot of people look up to you, especially the younger people. So, obviously, when I reached out to you, right, I could also feel that you were quite vested in the topic of the book itself, right? So I want to know why. I mean, what do you have to say about the topic of the book or the genre of the book?
I think I really, really resonated a lot with the title Clueless. Just the word clueless, because I think all of us, no matter what we do, what we achieve, or where we get at, we're all clueless at some stage of our life. And it's so funny that we're always looking for somebody else to tell us what to do, right? We're always looking forward to a motivational speaker, always looking, our parents, in India, it's even worse. Our parents decide whom we're going to spend the rest of our lives with, right? I find that extremely odd. And the funny thing is, being clueless is because we're always looking for somebody external to tell us what to do. And we never tend to ask ourselves what we really want. And it's so ironic that 99% of our decisions, including all our major life decisions, are not taken by ourselves, are taken by somebody else for us. And I think that's what the word clueless is so significant. And I think the important thing that Shalini is trying to tell through her book is figure out who you are, what you want to do, because therein lies the peace and happiness of life. And the journey of life is about finding what you want to do, not what others want you to do. And I think that's what she's beautifully brought out in the book.
Thank you so much. We'll quickly unveil the book.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy the read. Thank you.